How has the pandemic changed technology and what are its major impacts on the M&A deals?
So I don't know if I wouldn't say the pandemic has changed technology. I mean, there's been too little time for the technology industry to respond to the pandemic. I would say that during the pandemic, certain technologies enabled us to respond quickly or to adjust our business processes or work in a more agile way that enabled certain businesses to continue to operate or grow. And so there were a lot of special circumstances that were enabled by technology, and certain technologies became more important. Most notably, of course, are the video collaboration, remote working technologies, remote collaboration, technologies that enabled us to communicate, technologies that enabled us to share information. Those became more important. Those technologies that enable us to engage our customers digitally, and in a different way than in person, became more important. And in terms of the impact on M&A, M&A is driven by the market. So obviously, those technology firms or service organizations that were providing those related technology services became more in demand, and therefore their values increased and they may have grown faster, and that led to greater value.
What are the stakeholders from both businesses that must actively participate during integration in M&A? What roles are they expected to play?
Well, you need the entire business and engaged to, when you think about M&A, the first thing you have is due diligence by both parties. Is this going to be a good deal? Is there going to be greater value created by this transaction, right? Whatever that merger acquisition may be. And then once we get through that and we decide to go forward with the transaction and you start envisioning how these organizations come together, you really need everyone involved. You need the M&A team and the executive leadership that envisioned the transaction and why it was going to add value. And you need that strategy spelled out so the teams that are executing the post-merger integration can effectively execute the post-merger integration plan to realize that strategy. And it's complicated. We always like to create when we do post-merger integrations, we always create a very simple diagram which basically partners stakeholders from both organizations. If it's a acquisition or a merger by a like firm or complementary firm, we try to partner the stakeholders from both sides and essentially create a business milestone roadmap for the first 6 to 18 months of the post-merger transaction. Once the transaction is closed, and just literally grind it every month, every week, looking at those milestones, and those milestones are really about how the organization comes together, what technologies need to be put in play or adopted or consolidated to enable the organization to come together, and then what processes, how they're going to unify their processes across the organization. And all that leads to a technology strategy and plan that enables most of that.
If you had to put together a methodology or a standardized set of steps to ensure accurate prioritization of activities to make sure technology as well as process integration is done correctly during an M&A? How would that look like?
Well, we actually do have a playbook that we run every single time. And you start out with an executive team that has overall governance of the integration, and they also have the business objectives they're trying to achieve, right? What synergies they're trying to achieve, whether that's greater sales or growth in gross margin or a combined greater revenue or some operational efficiency, et cetera. Whatever that might be, that has to be kind of in the top of everyone's mind that are developing the integration plan. Then you have kind of the day-to-day, the week-to-week, month-to-month execution teams, the program managers, the business stakeholders that are getting together and essentially identifying. You have to look at every single business process, look at how it's done on both sides, formulate a strategy for how you're going to do it in the future, or if you're going to operate certain processes separately because they are unique and independently valuable. And you've got to have a plan for all of those things. And then that drives your systems plan, of course.
What are the typical integration challenges that enterprises must plan for to avoid post-merger hassle and budget overrun?
Well, the biggest issue are usually people issues, right? Essentially, when you're bringing two organizations together, you have overlapping roles and responsibilities. You have people, different reports that are used for measuring success that everyone has to agree upon. And you may have even different metrics people are using, and it's unclear who is accountable for what when you're bringing two organizations together. So a lot of decisions have to be made early to avoid those challenges. But I would say more than any other factor, the thing that causes problems are issues between people and unclear roles and responsibilities and competitive behavior.
A McKinsey report says while 50 to 60% of the initiatives intended to capture synergies during an M&A are strongly related to IT, most technology issues are not fully addressed during due diligence or the early stages of post-merger planning. How can companies avoid this miss from happening?
I don't think, I respectfully disagree with McKinsey's findings. I think, technology is a tool. It's like saying the hammer is the cause of the house not being built correctly. I don't believe that's usually the case. It's usually the architect or the engineer or the project manager that causes the challenge, right? So really it's about planning better and having a great technology strategy. But again, I think most often the cause of failed synergies is a poor vision for how the organization is going to come together and create those synergies, or people issues, political issues between overlapping areas of responsibility. And then that filters down to the last step in the process, which is developing a technology plan to enable those processes and people to work together. And when you have problems with your vision for how everything's going to work together, the people executing and coming together in a constructive way, then naturally you're going to have problems with the technology coming together. But I think if you have the processes figured out and you've gone through the planning and you've looked at all the process areas and you've developed a plan for each and every one of them to come together, then that leads to a natural technology decision that can be made. And then if you have clear accountability for who is responsible for making those decisions, then you can finalize the plan and execute a post-merger integration that leverages technology in an optimal way. However, I've in my experience, I can't remember a M&A that I was involved in, and we've both with our clients and we ourselves have been involved in a lot of integrations, and it's not common for it to be a technology problem. It's usually a planning and process problem that leads to unclear technology plan that prevents the organization from operating effectively together in a unified way.
How does Synoptic help businesses overcome typical M&A challenges?
Well, first of all, we follow a methodical process, right? Most importantly, we like to be involved early. And when the transaction is being envisioned in the early stages, there is so much that can be done to develop a plan and get buy-in and consensus across the organization by the decision makers on that plan, and to validate that it will achieve the desired results. So first and foremost, make sure we like to be involved early. Look at the business processes and all of the technologies involved early, and identify the challenges around the two organizations coming together in a unified way. And, it's basic stuff, right? You're going to have, for example, a CRM and or a customer experience platform, and probably both organizations have one of those. So which one will you use? But more importantly, how does the sales organization come together? How does the customer service organization come together? How is the reporting structure going to be? Then what processes are going to be adopted? Are you going to take processes from one organization or the other, or are they going to operate side by side? Are you going to operate the system side by side? All of those decisions need to be planned out, because that affects what synergies you'll be able to achieve. And then you have to go through each process area, finance and accounting, the supply chain processes, the data and analytics, file sharing, collaboration. How is all of that going to happen? And then how is the organization going to be organized? What processes are going to be in place? And then which systems are you going to adopt, in that order?